So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live show. It's recorded for Ustream.tv and it's also recorded for Ustream for people to watch at their leisure. So welcome all my YouTubers. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe and have a comment for any requests for colour books or water-based materials that you see. Just make a comment below. I do try to get back to people as soon as possible. So I have been working in my Daydreams Hanna Karlzon colour book and I've used all sorts in here. This is what gave me the idea to do the graphic liner pens because they were kind of inky. That's gouache, I've got watercolour, again that's the inks, acrylic inks using the pens. When I had a blob I did a complete page. I can't remember what that is. There is a video on that one but I just can't remember offhand. That's using the peerless watercolours. That's pastels, they're pastels. Hydrus, that's peerless watercolours. Pastels blended, I think they're Hydrus. That's pastels. I think that one is Inktense blocks. No, tell a lie. That one is Derwent ink blocks, watercolour blocks. This is all acrylic inks because I'm using them up when I have a blob. Can't remember what that one is. Some kind of watercolour pencil. That's watercolour. That's pastels, but pastels blended with a damp brush. Whereas that one is pastels blended with a blender. It's a kind of a rubberized colour shaper, and I've got some very black ones that are very hard because it's a colour page. So a couple of colours and blended them, and then I just went over them with a very barely damp brush, and that set them. So there was no sprays or anything. But this one was scratching the colour of the pastel and then using a brush and blending it with a brush to get a watercolour effect, and it's set. So technically it's a pastel but it reacts like a watercolour. I think I've got some more Inktense blocks in here. That one is Inktense blocks, so this was way of doing it, scratching a bit of colour and manipulating it with a damp brush to give some beautiful soft colours. But they are Inktense blocks, which are, of course, now they're blended, they're not movable. Having said that, the very darks will probably move, but the very pales won't, because you do need a certain amount of ratio between water and pigment to set them. That one is another Derwent graphic liner pen with the acrylic ink, and I splattered it, that one as well, so it splatters on that because I had a blob. These are peerless. That could be Hydrus, but no, peerless. It's the pink that I love. That one looks like it's scratched colour and I haven't manipulated it yet. Again, that's the graphic, that's doing the monochrome graphic liner pens from Derwent. That one's the same. Can't remember what that one is. And that's pastel, and I think the very first one is pastel. And I'll be doing some more pastel work in a minute. So that's using the ordinary pastels, the professional pastels, and then just manipulating them with a blender and then just going over with a damp brush, and so you set it with water. So I'm going to do this bunny page, and I've taken my. You've got to be careful because if you pick this up, it'll break. But they're in kind of like a foam mould, and I like to have my colours out here, so I can just pick them up, and they're a lot easier to pick up than they are if they're in the rigid little pots. I've also put little tabs on mine, and these are wells, so you could scrape colour in and make washes. Of course, being the Inktense, once it's set, it's not movable. But I like to use them in a different way. I like to kind of squish some colour, and I'm going to use my Derwent number 1 and 2 brushes, which are the least wet of all of them, and set them and manipulate them at the same time, because my hands at the moment won't use a blender. So everything I have to do is done with a damp brush. So I think I might just put a little bit of this, and of course being white you can't tell. And remember, as most pastels, we need a key, we need a rough paper, and we don't have a rough paper here. So I put a little bit of white, so that, and really in an ideal world what I would do is put that white there. I'd move them all up, so that would be the darkest be black, and white would be here, because this is where I would use it. We do have, now these aren't named, so what you can do is look in your little book of watercolours, if you can possibly find it. I've just had to move the studio around because it's right in front of me, because the sun's coming around and it's getting really hot in here. So in here I have my Derwent Inktense pencils, and although the Inktense blocks are not named, they are numbered. So if we look at this one, which is 900, I'm actually going to look at the blues. 900 is Iris blue. So the Inktense block corresponds to the Inktense pencil. So if we find 900, well, mine is an old set. I've got some new and some old, and this one is 109, but it is Iris blue. So these two are the same colour. But what you can do is see from this that we get 10 shades. We don't just get one. So although this is one colour, if you use it strong, you get this. If you use it paler, you can use paler colours. Oh, Susie says when she uses the blocks, she uses them in the tray with a water brush. You scratch them into a mat, but use them in the tray. Yes, I've got all the numbers. They're all numbered, but they're not named. But what you can do is, because I've got the Inktense pencils, so if you didn't have the pencils, you could just download the Inktense pencil colour guide, and if you looked up number 900, you would find it's Iris blue. But this is going to give me 10 colours from this particular, almost a pastel. It's an ink pastel. If we were kind of, it's ink because it's Inktense and it's based on an ink, but it's technically a pastel. So I keep this handy so that I've got a colour guide. So this one is 220, and mine are in colour, in numerical order. They're in colour order. So, oops, I need to keep within my Inktense. And mine says 220 is Sicilian yellow. So I know I can get these colours from this pastel. And it's just, sometimes it's, you could do this in here, I think. I may have a go with them. But you can do all sorts of things with the pastels. You can do exactly what you can do with an ordinary pastel, but you can't manipulate it once it's dry. So I shall keep that handy. Oh, Suzanne says she flicks them over to preserve the number. And what I do is there's England on one side, so we've got here It might not show up with that one. Let's look for a darker one. This says England, Derwent, Inktense and the number. So I make a little well over the England, and if I find one that I've used a lot, I haven't used them at all really, but no, they all look immaculate. They would do. I have used them, but I tend to stay away from the number. But Susie's idea is probably better is turn them over. But I want to use my colour guide, so I need them the right way up. But if you use the little indent where it's England, eventually it goes into a little well. That's one that I've used. So this one is 700, and it's I've dropped it, so it's broken. But where the England is, it's now gone into like a little well. So, but I don't use mine in such a strong way. So I've got a smaller brush for the smaller areas and my number 2 Derwent brush for the bigger areas. And this particular page in Hanna Karlzon, it can take a water brush. Now I did put some white on there. So the next colour I think I want is this one. So I think I'm going to put this one around the outside here. And then take some more. So I am using them more like a pastel. And the reason I'm doing that is, unfortunately, my hands aren't brilliant. So this means you can just stroke them across. And then I think when we get to here, we might want another colour. I don't know if that would then go white again. Oops, ow, go white again. Now you can blend these with your fingers, or I'm going to blend them straight with a brush because it's really easy and really quick. So one thing you can do with them is, if you haven't activated them with a brush, what you can do is can use an eraser, and if you make a mistake, but want to keep all the yellow inside and then the other colour on the outside, if I can do that. So you can colour the whole of the page. And I don't normally do this, so it's a bit of an experiment. Because I think because if you use the edge you get a sharper edge, and I think I might just use that one. Don't know if I like that one. That's going into the reddy colours. I should have had a look at the colours before I used it. So now I want to go to this kind of colour really. 920, need a quick look. Oh yes, can go. Yes, you can get the brush and just use it from here, and it'll just do what the pastel does. And the Inktense pencil, they're a bit crumbly, but that's all. Again, it's not the pigment. The pigment colour is identical, but what makes the difference is this is obviously a crumblier binder. The binder in this is different to the binder in the pencil, but the pigment is exactly the same. The colour pigment is exactly the same. It's like you could make one colour pigment, and you could divide it up into 4 or 5 little piles of dust, because that's basically what it is when it's in its pure form. Or you can grind it down to a dust, and then you can add gum arabic, makes a watercolour, some kind of other compound makes an oil colour, some kind of other binder makes an Inktense, an ink, some other make an acrylic, and so the same colour is used, it's just you have the different binders. I think I've just squashed and broken one because I'm on a bit of a lip there. So I'm just going to have a look for this. This is 920. So this pigment is ink based, so like any ink, it's a water based ink, it's not an acrylic. This one's 920, so this is quite dark, this one. I'm probably better with 900. And again, 900 looks a paler brown, but it isn't. But you can put quite a few colours together, so we put that one over there. I probably wouldn't recommend putting anything on top of it, and really you should probably put a page underneath it as well, so you don't go over the colours. I'll probably do that before I get to the end. I am tempted to just put a little bit of this kind of dark. And it's not going to look like a scribble, it's going to blend. So I'm just going to pop these to one side. So you could blend them with your finger. I've not done this before, but I can't use my hands because it hurts me. The other thing you could do is you would need a slightly bigger blender, but I make sure it's clean, and you blend that way. Now it might not work now because I've done that. I'm going to use a slightly bigger brush, number 2, I think. I don't want it saturated wet, I do want it fairly damp. So start from the inside and work out. And I'll do one side and then I'll zoom in and you can see what I'm doing. So I've got the white there, which is, and now I've got a lot of colour here and I've got a ridge. I don't want that. So I am using my damp because I want to blend outwards. I don't want a line. So you want to blend out, and what you're going to be doing and I haven't really used these colours before, so this is why I was always frightened of this page. And again, you've got to keep cleaning your brush even though it's a little bit, because I want to keep that white in the middle, and it should blend to a beautiful halo. And remember, we can't rub too much because it's a page. So I'll zoom in and you can see what I'm doing now. We'll be turning the book up and down because you've got to be fairly consistent and you have to really have a nice angle for your hand and your wrist. So I'll zoom in and hopefully we'll be able to see. Just going to see if I can move the camera. Because I'll just focus it. And again, now I've got that it's dried. It's a little bit damp. You can feel it's a little bit damp, but it hasn't gone through, it hasn't even shown through on this. But I haven't got my brush too wet. I've squeezed water through it and I've made it barely damp. But this action now will, although technically it's not a watercolour, it's reacting like a watercolour. This way you do waste a little bit of colour because we want to keep that white halo glow. And the more you manipulate the brush, but I've actually managed it. I haven't done this before, so it always put me off doing that. So now what I'm going to do is the same. I'm going to work in this area. Now remember, if you put your hand on it, you will smudge it because technically it's a pastel. And again, I need to keep cleaning my brush because I want to keep that lovely soft transition from light to dark. And it's breaking my heart, but I am wasting a little bit. And this is where you have to concentrate a little bit because it's so easy to make a mistake. So we're going to take that out until it matches. We don't want any harsh lines. If you work in smaller areas, you're not going to get any buckle. So that's really what we're looking for. And I'm going a bit cross-eyed at the moment. I'm sure if we put some darker leaves out, we'd be fine. So we go into that bug and round it. And as soon as you've matched up with that side, you can concentrate on going down. Now this is a very large brush, but I'm just teasing that down. I can go in there later. So again, this side. It starts to match, and we're just trying to use the tip of the brush, because if you, the more of the brush you manipulate, the more water you get out, and we want to keep all that water in if possible. Now really I should be using the little brush, but I wanted to show you. So again, now we start here, and when it starts to match, we can kind of branch out a bit and come down here. To clean that brush because we really don't want to lose that lovely glowing light. going to need to turn it now so we've got that lovely nice action. So again, we've got a bug. I'm going to go around the bug. And I'm not going to attempt to go there because I know I'm going to make a boo-boo. So again, behind the bug, make sure, and because these are, they're water soluble in their raw state, the same as the pencils, but I couldn't go back in here and move it about. Now if I did it with watercolour pencils or I did it with pastel, I could go in it as many times as I wanted, because a pastel, although it's not a watercolour, it behaves like a watercolour when it's added to water. I could have got some darker colours in here, but I shall bring some greens up so I can work the other way over the top. So again, I've got to turn that all the way around because I must have a nice wrist action because it's got to be comfortable. So again, pick up the other side of the bunny, try not to go over the lines if possible. If you do, you're going to have a dark bunny. If you don't, you can have a light grey bunny. So it depends on what you want. Again, I'm now manipulating most of the brush and it's getting too wet, so we'll clean that off. Again, it's the wings I want to be pale if I can help it, so I'll go around the bug. We're nearly there. So to go here now, so I can take that white, because the white will, although you can't see it, it will blend in with the other to make it paler. And now I need some kitchen paper. Sorry, some brain is melting with everything else. I need, and I also had some handy, but they seem to have disappeared. This is my quite expensive paper, but you need, probably only need one actually, you can move it about and put that here. So we've got our paper. See about the woofykins. Manipulate that out. And it can go into now. I kind of want it really nice and strong in this corner if possible, but I don't want to over wet it, I don't want to overwork it because it's a colour page and it won't like it. So I'm just going to do this. I can always go back over it with some other colour later. So I'm just going to get a general, just kind of a general mix all the way around. And of course when we get to the bottom we have to do everything in reverse. The idea is we get rid of all the lines and all that scratched colour ends up a shade. go back to this side, and then we can manipulate this colour. And you can always go over those white snowdrops or whatever they are. And it would be nice to have the bunny again. I will scratch the green and come back up to match that, all these yellows. So we can just give them a bit. Now we do have a bit of a line there, so got to be a little bit careful. Because remember, it's difficult to get harsh lines out because the Inktense blocks, like the Inktense pencils, they are set when they dry, so we've got to be a little bit careful. But of course I can make this as dark as anything on the outside, and the darker I make the outside, the brighter the halo light's going to look. So I'm not particularly bothered I have a line at the bottom. If I wanted it to be softer, it would bother me. I wouldn't do it like this. But I know I'm going to work some dark greens up and down and out. So he's got the lantern. We've got the white candle. I think we need a yellow flame. So what I could do now is swap to the little brush, and it's been squeezed, it's quite wet. Now this is what I've used, so I have taken off quite a bit of colour. So I can just turn that over. And what I want to do is wet the brush and then do the same as I do with the riggers, so it's barely dry. If you did this with it, you'd make more water, but if you tickle just manipulate the end, you get a nice dampness through and through. So now I'm going to go in with, this is what I was saying about, oops, I'm going to put them the right way up, because if you keep them all the same way, it doesn't matter which way it is, but they want to be all the same way, because what I want to do is use the England sign as a little well. So I want a yellow flame, so I think I'm going to go for the 200. So just by doing this, eventually there'll be a little hole there, but if you can see that colour, I've got quite a lot on there, and all I did was tease this one. I just teased it a little bit. That's quite strong. You can see it now, it's very strong, that. And then I can touch that little yellow flame. I think I might just put it in there as a glow. And I see I've got so much colour on here. He could have a little, maybe not a yellow bandana, but if I did that I could make it orange. So if we wanted any more yellow anywhere, this is the time to do it, because you see how strong this yellow is. And all I did was just touch the tip. So it's very, very, very strong because it's Inktense. And the other reason is there's a lot of pigment and a little binder. So we could do this a golden colour, I think. Do I want it golden or do I want it brass? I think I'm going to look for the greens. So again, it's now not an Inktense pencil, it's now set. So I can put my greens on there. And again, if I'm not sure, because some of these are kind of really dark, I have a little look on my book on the greens. There's a leaf green, which is kind of a dark olive, and there's an olive. So we've got a light olive and a spring green. The light olive is that one. I like that one and that one. So light olive is £4.50. Sorry, £15.40. And is that the darker one, that one? That's 1600. 1600. I think 1600 is that one. So they're the two I actually want, I think. Yeah. 1320 is... oh, it's more of a green that. So yeah, I like those two colours. And again, I'm going to leave them in there, not actually in proper order. So get my pastels together. So the stem, I think I'm going to do paler. So again, on that England sign, and I want to pale a bit first, because again, like we did before, we want just a pale colour. And I have wet the page a little bit too much, but it hasn't buckled, but it's just crinkled a little bit. But it's a very nice, quick way to work, is this. So again, I can just touch that and manipulate the colour. And I can go over this with a smaller brush. I'm just getting just a bit of an idea. Clean the brush and then go for the leaves. Maybe I've done the wrong colour. Maybe that one would have been better. The leaf colour, but never mind, it's done now. If you keep it pale, we can green it up if we add some orange to it or something. Go back to this one. So we've got to do the little, oops, push those in. And I've used them a couple of times like this. So the England sign does last quite a bit. So I think number 400 is 400. 410 is hot red chili. and 400 is poppy red. I think we'll have poppy red 400 for the little toadstools. Now what you could do is take 400 and scratch. I've forgotten that's what I was doing to start with. You scratch a little bit here, and this is how you could do it with pastel. So we're just scratching a little bit at the bottom. So we can use the rule of 3. We can do red, orange and yellow on the top, or we can take a brush and get a highlight going from the full colour to a paler colour. Just looking for a few more, can't find any, so we put that back. That's number 400. I think I might like this one. Oh, you can scratch colour and see what it looks like. This might be a nicer colour on the top. Get that a bit pinkier. And then I'm hoping that that one's carmine. Just have a very quick look, because I like carmine to make my dark reds darker. Oh, I think that's either Shiraz, that one. See if we've got a carmine. We haven't got a carmine, we've got a Shiraz. And I kind of like the Shiraz, and I'm pretty sure that that's Shiraz. So right at the bottom, I'm just going to put just a scratch, a line scratch of colour. And that's going to make such a difference in a minute. So again, I'll put these out of the way, because so clean. Make sure you've got a clean, damp brush. I'm going to start at this side here. I wonder if that's a bit blurred. Sorry guys, I wonder if it's a bit blurred. That doesn't look perfect, does it? Start at the top, that nice pale pinky, draw in some red, and then end on that line with that really dark. And you can move it up, you can colour it all over. And this brush is a little bit too wet, but it's fine, it'll be fine. And again, we've lost our little whites, but you can put, I think you can put Posca pens over this, or white pen, or a blob of gouache would do. The idea is that you do touch all the colour, because we need it to be fixed. And believe me, that wouldn't be. I could touch the bottom of that and smudge it, because I've got more colour than I have water. And so the pale, thinner colours, and I've gone over that one as well, but never mind. It's a bit clumsy today. We have some little pink toadstools now. I think I'm just going to move the camera down again, because that's why it didn't like being... Didn't like it. So we've got some little toasters. I was going to say they're still wet, but I think they're dry. So if you didn't want a water brush, if you wanted to be a watercolour effect, we could go back to our little riggers. And I like the number. I can't find my number 1 now, but so it's going to be there somewhere. This one is my number 1 graduate liner rigger, and it seems to be just the right size because I don't want to work too wet. So damp brush, and again I think I'm going to take the colour from here. We want to work with the greens. Let's just double check the colours. So we'll have a very quick look at the greens. Now we don't want a blue green really. Ionian green is quite nice. That's kind of a really earthy green. I like that one, and I like beach green. So I think we'll have 5, 10. Because again I'm looking here, but I'm also looking here, so we can get a really nice effect on these paler ones. So Ionian is, oh no, what did I say? Beach. I think Ionian actually. So that's 1320. And so this one is 1320. So again, using the Little England, just a tiny amount, and you're just going to put a little bit. Now we could put a bit more if we had a bigger surface area. And it's going to go to a watercolour, so we're going to get strong in the middle, and you could do every single one like this. Pick colour up, use a bit. Or the other way to do it is to scratch using the corner, scratch a little bit of colour, and this is how I did the other one, just a little bit of colour. And if you wanted to do this at a later date, you'd have to put some greaseproof paper between. So we've scratched all that, and we've got our nice long damp rigger, not too wet, and we're just going to activate that and drag it out. Clean the brush every time and drag the colour out, and it's going to give you a really soft effect. You do have to clean your brush every time. So even though you're using the same materials and brushes, there's different ways to do it, and it depends on what effect you want. If you want it all strong greens, then just paint it in. To do that. And you can always go back in and just give it a bit of a darker colour if you wanted, but you get that lovely soft, and you wouldn't think that that is an Inktense block because you're using it in such a way. So again, if you've got such vitality there, very vivid, strong, dark, bright colours, but you can get a watercolour effect. The two at the top I haven't done. You can see the difference. So you can do it that way, or you can use the rigger the other way, whichever's easiest. The idea is that you get a nice effect. So let's just zoom out a little bit. You can see how it's affected by that pale. But of course in here we can put some real nice darks. Now you would want it strong colour in here, and then you want it fading up a bit. So let's do that. So I'll leave that one out because I know that that's the leaf. So again, I'm going back to my Inktense pencils just so I can have a look at what the greens look like, because really when you start looking at things that are dark you can't tell what they are. So that was the Ionian one, but again that's how dark it was, but I was using it here or in the middle rather than dark. There's a nice beach, but we also have I could then take that to dark, to brown at the bottom if I used leaf green, which is 500. So I need to get 500 I've got not in order. I mean 500, sorry guys, I can't count today. Let's have a look. Yeah, 1500, sorry, it's 1500. I can't find 1500. If I just moved it down here. You see, when you get to the darks, they look very dark. 1730. So what's 1730? 1730 is dark oak. Well, that looks green to me, but it does say 1730. But when I'm scratching it there, it's definitely 1730. So even though it looks greeny, it isn't. It is the true colour. But looking at them, it's almost impossible to tell what they are. Oh, I know why. What's wrong? Of course, there isn't. I don't think there's 72 Inktense, is there? Oh, there is. There is 72. Well, I don't know what I've done with that one. That's very strange. I can't seem to put my hand on that one. So I do want a darker one. So olive, light olive is 1540. So that's 1540. It's 1600, I can't count, so I want 1600, that's what I want out. So this one is leaf green, but it goes almost to a brown. The rigger is the number 1, the little things come off it, it's number 1. And that's my De La Rona rigger. And it just seems to be the right size for those. Now I do have this colour, Just going to put this again right to the bottom, so sometimes you do need to scratch the colour in. Use a corner and use an edge. You know, if you go like that, you're going to get a big area. Use the corner, and it's fine as the corner. The corner will make another edge, so that's quite dark in there. That's another one that's dark. Again, that one is dark, and I'm going to put this dark. So we've got a few darks there, so I'm going to do those first so that I can get rid of them. As I said, I did have all these in order, but never mind. So again, got to damp the brush again. Start here, manipulate this colour. So again, it's not a watercolour, but it reacts like a watercolour until it dries, and then it's permanent. So whatever you do with it, you have to do with it when it's wet, because once it's dried, you can't lift it up or do anything with it like you can with a watercolour. So I wanted this kind of really dark, and actually it does go down there really, so. See, you're going to get that mark. It's going to be difficult to get out. And then this is the same. Push that in. So I think I've done this before, but I just can't remember. So I've used the technique the same. You can do this with a watercolour pencil, you can do it with a watercolour crayon, you can do it with anything. There's the different ways. The pastels are better, both the Inktense blocks and pastels are better for blending this lovely way. But you can scratch colours together and do all sorts of lovely things to get some watercolour effects. I don't know where that one's going now. I think that one's that one. Of course, we take that up and we're going to get that lovely. And we're not going to see this effect until we darken the background, and then it will show up. And so I think I've done them all now. I think by the time it gets to here, I want it to get green and dark, I think. So I'll do all these flowers next. So again, take this big long one here, and I've left this. I can put the other one away because I've done all those. Put that one away now. If you want to leave it just with its tail sticking up, you can do. So again, just scratch a bit of colour. Now, some leaves are darker. Sometimes it might be easier to pick the colour up actually from the block. So I'll just manoeuvre that one. But they do melt, they're really nice for just absolutely melting. Now I am using the damp rigger because it is actually quite damp, this one. But when it gets down here, we kind of want these a bit darker so we can pick up a bit of colour. So if you want it pale, you scratch a tiny amount on the page. If you want strong, you take it onto the paintbrush from the block. No, I can hear Bungle. I thought he disappeared.
Would you like any for tea?
No, thank you, darling. It's too warm.
Yeah,
Could I have some iced water? Because this is quite warm. I think you could wash up in that water.
Right, so do you want the same glass, okay?
Yeah, just put some ice in it, darling, please. Cute. Thank you. Uh-oh. Bungle's woken up now. It's feeding time. I don't know how he's coping in here with his big furry coat on. But so now I need this kind of colour here. And again, you've got to be careful because if you get this on your page, it's stuck on. I kind of like this. Oh my goodness, Bungles. And this is very pale. This wants to be, you know, a lot deeper than this, a lot darker, because it's obviously. So you can make a little puddle of colour. That's better, and kind of really get an earthy colour underneath. And you've got to concentrate on where you're going, because this colour will not move. But you can build up some quite nice one. Yeah, Suzanne. Potty. Of course I can't open the windows wide because Bungle will escape. So I'm having to melt for my pussycats. And here comes trouble. So you can go in there and use these wonderful Inktense blocks in lots of different ways. Thank you, darling. Come on, so I'll zoom out and let's have a look. So I've got that kind of nice halo, which I didn't think I'd be able to get. I've got a bit of a crinkle, but it'll be fine. And actually, if you wet the other page at the other side, it'll crinkle back. And then I've got some quite nice darks going on here, and I might do some probably reds, poppy reds, and purple turnips there, and got some really nice darks in the corner there. So that's the end of part one, and that's Inktense blocks, both scratching colour on and then blending with a paintbrush, or using them as a little well as pure colour to get some really rich colours. So thanks for watching.